Hey, my name is Saarang Ali. Today we'll be doing a talk on trials preparation and how you can tackle your trials. Just to introduce myself firstly, I graduated from Fort Street High School, which is located in Petersham, and alhamdulillah, I got an ATAR of 99.4. Since then, I'm going to UNSW at the moment and doing physiotherapy. And in addition to that, I run a tutoring center in Bankstown. And at this tutoring center, it's called Beyond Tutoring. We offer primary school tutoring as well as high school tutoring with subjects of maths and English, as well as senior sciences and other subjects. So some of the things I can share are some of my study habits, as well as how I got there. Firstly, to mention, I think academic success is not just about pen and paper. I think there was like a lot of other work that is required into how you look after yourself and then how you go about your exams. So for example, I think a lot of the aspects are not just about study techniques and revision, but also about how you address the other aspects of your life, like your physical activity, your relationship with friends and family. So I think it's all holistic in terms of success. Maybe I can start by mentioning some of the revision techniques I would use. I wouldn't be very strict with it. I'd be very flexible, to be honest, with my own revision techniques. I'll look at what goal I have, which was ultimately at that time to get into medicine. So my goal was to get into medicine, and I tried to break it down. What is the ATAR requirement for medicine? And for that, it's the highest ATAR possible. There's no specific ATAR requirement for majority of courses in medicine. So that's my big goal that I had. But then I broke it down further into more of a term-by-term goal. What do I need in order to get that highest ATAR possible, which is 99.95? And when I broke it down further from there, then I thought, okay, I need to be first ranked in all of my subjects. And that's the goal I had from the start of year 12 and even before that in year 11. Now, after breaking down this goal, then I thought to myself, okay, to get first ranked in each subject, how much work will I need to put in for each subject? So obviously there was maths, and alhamdulillah, maths was probably my strong suit, whereas English, it was a bit more difficult. So in my revision, I would cater for that accordingly and make sure that I'm spending enough time for English, all in hope of achieving this big goal, which was to get the highest ATAR possible. Now, that big goal of getting rank 1 came down to assessment by assessment. What do I need in every assessment? Say, for example, I need to get 100% in every assessment if I want to get rank 1. So then from that goal, which was an assessment by assessment goal, I broke it into a week by week goal. How much work do I need to put in every single week? How many hours would I need to dedicate to get 100%? And then it would go into, for example, let's take maths for an example. I'm going to revise trigonometry, polynomials, etc., all in anticipation for my exam, and I've got 5 weeks. So then I break it into week by week what I'm going to be doing. So for example, in the first and second week, I might be doing general revision for trig, functions, and polynomials. And then in the second week, I might be doing, for example, calculus and integration. Then in the third week, I would hone it in a bit more and move on to timed revision. So I'll do the same thing, but focus more on timed revision because ultimately you're preparing for a timed exam. Then in the fourth week, I would shift more to trying to recreate the exam setting. And this is something I'll elaborate more a little bit later. But you need to basically at home make yourself feel as if you're sitting the actual exam. So when you're sitting the exam, you're there on the table, there's nothing else distracting you, there's no phone around, you've got a timer in front of you, and you're in the actual exam. Although it's still week 4 of your practice session. Then in week 5, you sort of shift to answering the more difficult questions because now you're doing past papers and half the questions are too easy because you've revised. So now you move on to only practicing the harder questions. And then in the days leading up to the test, you literally try and sit the exam at home. So you print out the most similar exam paper you can find. So if you're sitting the HSC in 2022 like I was, I'd print HSC 2021 and sit down in 3 hours and do that paper, right? For example, extension 1, maths. After trying to replicate that exam setting, I was pretty much ready at that point, right? And so that would be my 5 weeks. Now, once again, in terms of the goals, going back to the goals, I had an overall goal, which got broken down into an assessment by assessment goal, into a week by week goal, but it needed to be broken down into a day by day goal. I said the week by week goal, for example, in the first week, I was going to do revision for functions, polynomials, and trig. But now I need a day by day goal. So then I'd set, for example, on Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to do functions. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to do polynomials, etc. But it needs to go even further than that. right? And so that's where the timetabling comes into play. So now on Monday, yes, I'm going to do functions, but what am I going to do in functions? I'm not just going to write on my timetable functions. That's not enough. So I need specifics. I need Cambridge chapter review for functions, or I need question this to this in exercise 8, whatever, in functions. You know what I mean? Like trying to become more specific now in terms of how I can break down my goal. And so it went from a holistic goal to a term by term goal to a week by week goal to a day by day goal to an hour by hour goal to basically just trying to do as much work as possible in this moment that I was preparing for in the HSC. So that's basically a summary of how I broke down my goals in preparation for the trials and then the HSC. Now, other things I'd like to mention is going back to what I said about a holistic like preparation, catering to your physical needs, catering to your relationship with friends and family. It's also important that when you structure your day, you have enough time to go and do some exercise, to go and talk to your parents, talk to your brother, sister, spend some time in nature. These are all important aspects that all come together ultimately to help you be prepared for the exam. So I had my fair share of spending time with my mum, going for walks, or spending time playing like soccer with my friends, spending time at school, just relaxing and enjoying the last few weeks of school as well. Because of course you're in year 12, you've been with your friends for a long time. And so you shouldn't neglect the importance of spending time with your friends, especially while you're at school. Ultimately, I think, alhamdulillah, when both of those things came together, being able to properly schedule my work as well as being able to cater to health from a holistic perspective, then I think when it came to the exam, I wasn't stressed, alhamdulillah. I wasn't nervous. I'd been well prepared. I was confident, and then I was able to do well, alhamdulillah. So, yeah, that's my talk on the HSC. Why someone wouldn't be motivated, I think it comes down to like, what are you really trying to achieve out of academics? Like for me at that time, it was to get into medicine, and that, alhamdulillah, it changed into getting into physiotherapy, right? Like my intention or motivation changed. But if you think about it, like motivation goes beyond just getting a good mark. Like for me, it was to do medicine in order to benefit the ummah, right? It was on a bigger picture. A lot of people might ask in that same vein, like, what's the point of studying? What's the point of doing exams, right? Like a lot of people say that. But I think like if you look at your intention, like what really is it overall, right? Is it to benefit the community? Is it to make money, like for the sake of making money, or is it to make money to provide for your family ultimately? Like once your motivation change and shifts to essentially deen, right? Because that ties in like your life's purpose. Does that make sense? I know that's a bit deep, but ultimately, like when you have like a bigger purpose in life, academics is a part of it, right? School is not pointless if you tie into being a Muslim. So that's what I would say for anyone who's like struggling with motivation. What do they want to get out of academics, and how does this relate to them being a Muslim, right? If you can figure that out, then you can again work backwards and like think about how much work I want to put into this and why I want to put that work in. That's right.
Thank you. So the next question I have, Saarang, for you is to know if you get some sort of work pressure or stress, if you had any incidents, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so this was especially important in year 12 because in year 12 you're doing more study than you'll ever do in your life, more than university, obviously. So in terms of pressure and work, I think, alhamdulillah, my experiences in sport really helped with that, like incredibly, because I play a lot of cricket. And when you're playing cricket, like the amount of pressure on you is unreal when you're batting, because every single time you have to be on the ball, right? You have to be like 100% attentive and confident in yourself. Otherwise, one mistake and it's all over in cricket, right? So I think that transferred a lot over to my academics, because when I walked into a test, alhamdulillah, you know, I'd prepared well. And then in terms of the actual exam on the day, I would be quite relaxed. I would have had good sleep. I would have, you know, spent enough time with my friends, family. I would have been well hydrated. I would have ate, you know, food, sufficient amounts. So I addressed those other aspects. And then again, I just looked at my goal. I knew that, alhamdulillah, like I'd spent enough time addressing what it takes to achieve my goal. And so there was no reason to be stressed, really, at that point. Because once you break it down into day-by-day goals and you're just ticking your goals off day by day, then when it comes to the exam is just another day. Just like you sat those same papers at home, right, the day before, the 2 days before, then the exam itself is just another past paper, really. Especially on the day before the exam, I would do nothing. So I would barely study. I would chill, go for a walk, watch a movie, relax. Because after doing like 4 weeks of practice, the last day, the last hour is not really going to make a significant difference. And so instead, you rather just use that to freshen your mind, relax, and be ready for the exam day.
You mentioned that you found it really difficult for English because you're more like a maths person.
Mhm.
So I'm more of a science person, and so I also very much struggle with English. So for English, what is it that you did that made it easier for you
When are your trials?
in a week?
In 1 week, I can answer generally. Your case is a bit different. You got 1 week left.
Yeah.
But as a general answer, for English, alhamdulillah, I think that was one of my like big accomplishments because it was so difficult for me. Like the way my mind works is not English, it's maths and science, and that's pretty much it, right? Just for some context, I did chemistry, PDHP, advanced English, and 4 unit maths, and I loved maths, but not English, definitely not English. So I really struggled initially. My first task I got like average, second task I got average. And then I'm like, how do I get it right? But then I realized like there's no right in English. It's just all ambiguous, right? Like you can't be right in English, can you? So again, I thought to myself like, okay, how am I going to write what the marker sees as right? Because at the end of the day, English is what the marker sees as right, not what is objectively right. On maths, you have a right and wrong, right? In maths. So there were a few things I did. One of them was getting feedback from my teachers. Like my teachers became really, my teacher in particular became really supportive of me handing in a draft to her like well prior to the assessment. She'd mark it, detailed feedback, like whatever I need to do. It's a bit late for that now, but nonetheless, yeah, I'll speak about what you can do in like 1 week's time. But initially, I was handing in drafts very early, like at least a month prior to the exam or the assignment, and the teacher, she gave like really cohesive feedback, and I would go back and refine what I had. The next thing was looking at exemplars. So looking at what those people have done to get like a 20 out of 20 mark, right? Because what they did to get a 20 out of 20, I basically need to follow that same structure, right? So next thing was looking at exemplar essays. All good?
Yeah. Okay.
Next thing was looking at exemplar essays, right? So I was trying to look at what the people have done to get 20 out of 20, and then trying to incorporate the techniques and the strategies they used in my own essays. So I did look at a few exemplars to understand what markers want to say, and as we discussed, that's eventually how you get marks. The next thing I did was looking at what scholars have had to say, not scholars, but critics have had to say about books rather than what I have to say about books. Because as I said, I'm not good at English. So when I read a book, I just read it. I don't really understand what Shakespeare was trying to say about the context of his time. I'm just reading it, you know what I mean? So I would just quickly look at Spark Notes for the summary about what the book's about. I never read a book. I think I read one book since year 7 to 12. Even now, I still haven't read a book. I'm not much of a reader. But I would look at what SparkNotes has to say about it for a general summary. Then I would go and look at what critics have had to say about it because their opinion on the book is very valuable, right? The perspectives they provide, we can't see when we read a book. So after doing those three things, exemplars, feedback from teachers, and critic quotes, that basically set me up in terms of having good analysis and a good plan for the text. Then I would essentially create these like essay plans, and maybe I'll show you later. But pretty much what I'd have is I would have no thesis because the thesis is to be made up according to the question. I'd have the second, third, and fourth sentence of the intro set because you don't really need to change that. I'd have no link because the link needs to be made up on the spot. Then for each paragraph, I would construct a theme according to the quotes that I had. So I would say, okay, I've got enough quotes to make a whole paragraph about the topic of, for example, materialism or something like that. And so I would have materialism, and then I'd have a table with the quote and its analysis in it for each paragraph, right? I have 3 to 4 quotes for each paragraph. And then once I have that all set, I'd have it in one big document. There's no topic sentences there. It's just a theme. So it just says something about challenging materialism, because the question is going to dictate what my topic sentence will be on the exam day. So pretty much I'd have that laid out as no thesis, but rest of the intro, no topic sentence, but rest of the paragraph 3 times, and then no conclusion set. I'd memorize all of that, because on the day what happens is 90% of that structure stays the same. It's 10% alters because of the question, and then the topic sentences and thesis you need to fill out on the day. So when your exam starts or your reading time starts, that's when you make those thesis and topic sentences. So that's pretty much what I did for English. I'll show you some examples later if you'd like. What else for English? Like in general, I think what really shifted my marks in English was like trying to see what the author is trying to say about the world. And it's very general, but like that's where it all started, like trying to see that this author is not just writing with like metaphors and stuff for no reason. Like he or she is actually trying to influence the world and make a comment about the world. So what is that comment? And if you think about it, all the questions essentially are asking you, what is this author trying to say about the world in the topic of X? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my general feedback for English.
Thanks, Saurabh. That was quite detailed one. Especially I learned about the last part you say, that if you write through the eyes of the author, what they see as a word. One question, which is I have experienced a couple of times, when you're in an exam and you are naturally in a time pressure, a lot of things you need to offload from your mind to on the paper.
Yep.
If you gone blanks, have you gone blank? Sometimes just say what to do next, and how did you deal if it happened?
Yeah, so I think in English in particular.
No, in general in
Anything.
exam, generally. So if what is the strategy come out, because it's a one-off chance, you can't have it reappear on the exam. It's not like undo, redo.
Yep.
So if you need to, you have I don't know how long it takes you to realign your mind and just keep going. What do you have any strategy? Did you experience that thing yourself?
Yeah, so everyone experiences blanks, so it's completely normal. But I think that if you've already experienced blanks in your preparation, then the blank in the exam, you'll be accustomed to how to adapt to it. So in your preparation as well, you would have gone blank many times. Like you'll be sitting a past paper, and then you'll be like, okay, how do I do this question? Time's ticking. I don't know how to answer it. So in that context, what you do is you adapt. Like you might skip the question, you might come back to it later, you might do enough parts of the question to get a mark or two and then move on. Like it's very variable what you can do. But bottom line is that if you've already prepared for those blanks occurring in your practice, because they occur in your practice as well, then in the exam, it shouldn't be something that just completely throws you off guard, because you've always got a plan B. Either you move on to the next question or you continue with this question and then stop when you know that, okay, at the moment I can't keep doing this, I'm going to come back to it later. Apart from that, sometimes it takes a reassessment of the question. So you're just trying to do the question and you're just going in the wrong direction. So then you just stop, breathe for a second, look again at the question. What is it trying to ask you? Just reassess like how you're going about things. Even during the HSC, like a 3-hour exam is something that we're not accustomed to in year 12 until trials. So at halftime, I'd go, take a drink of water, wash my face. It's completely normal. So don't be afraid to spend like a couple of minutes just to relax and ease your mind in the middle of an exam, because that 3 hours, the first hour, you're like, doing it very, I guess, with high concentration. The second hour, you start having headaches. You feel like you won't get to the end of it. And then the third hour, adrenaline kicks in again and you just finish the exam. So yeah.
We go for the last question.
So back at English, I think my worst part for English is unseen questions,
Yeah.
the short answer. And my teacher told me that I should just do a question and take as much time as I need to do that one question.
Mm-hmm.
But I've realized that it doesn't get any better. So for when I do unseen, I'm not aiming to get a 20 out of 20, but if I have to get as much as I can, what do I have to do?
Firstly, you have to aim for a 20 out of 20. What can you do? Firstly, I'm not good at English, just to preset that. So for unseen, the process is pretty repetitive first and foremost. in terms of the quote technique analysis. It just keeps repeating. And once you find your topic sentence, the rest is just repeat. Like different quote, same point, different quote, same point, but from a slightly different wording, really, to be honest, with unseen. So in your reading time, which I believe is 10 minutes in paper one, yeah, you go through, you quickly, like, I think if I remember correctly, I would try and create my topic sentences in the reading time. I think it was that. Whereas other people, I think they just tried to read each text in depth. I think all I tried to do was create a topic sentence so that, oh yeah, the other thing I used to do was read the questions in paper one, in unseen. So you got 10 minutes reading time, yeah? First minute, you look at the common mod. The rest of the 9 minutes, I would read the question for each one and then read the text. So that when I'm reading the text, I'm reading it with the question in mind. And then by the end of reading the text, you have a somewhat answer to the question. Just very generally, like how you're going to answer it, the topic sentence. And then after you sort of know what you're going to write as your topic sentence, then reading time is done. Then you go through, and now when you're reading it, you've got a topic sentence in mind. Now you're finding X amount of quotes for that topic sentence. And the question of how many quotes, you might have had the n minus 1 rule. So marks minus 1. So 4 marks, three quotes. Yeah. In regard to like how to structure your analysis, it was very repetitive, and a lot of the learning came from the HSC marking criteria guidelines that you see on NESA. So you could see like a similar sort of structure. That would be like the irony in this quote does this, and it would just always link to the topic sentence. You just repeat. Don't do a link sentence unless you have time. There's no need for it. It's like if you have excess time, then you write it, which you probably, like if you prepare well, you probably will, because the amount of adrenaline in the test, you write so fast, obviously. So yeah, as for that, maybe we'll go in more detail later. Yeah, once we actually have a look at an example, then I can show you like what parts of it are good and what aren't. Yeah.
Thank you, Saarang. That was really nice to learn a few things, which is a process. As you said, you need to start setting up your bigger goal, converting into weekly, and then on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And that's how the students should do, because what you said is beautiful, that if you didn't do for 2 years, the last 1 hour won't make any difference either.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and we'll catch up again on another topic on the same way.